In order to become bigger and stronger and create more glory, this simple open-air production factory in Pakistan actually only has this. How did they do it? In order to transport these heavy steel bars to the production station, they can only use tractors to pull them. After transporting them to the station, they can only use lifting chains to assist. Put nails on the bottom of the two steel bars before they can officially enter the assembly process. In order to shape the required curvature on the head of the steel bar, they need to use steel teeth to draw, and then they can use the second circle to cut the sword. After careful cutting, the cut steel plate only needs to be knocked down with a hammer. At this time, the head of the steel bar has been cut. In order to shape the steel plate into the required curvature, they need to use the second lac to heat the steel plate. Overheating reduces its hardness, so that the steel plate can be knocked with a hammer to shape the standard curvature. After completing this step, the masters can assemble it. To prevent the horizontality of the two beams from deviating, use a level to measure and ensure that there is no problem. Then you can install the pre-made scale inside the beam. When installing the scale, the position has been marked in advance. We only need to use electric welding to fix it. During the connection process, to prevent the position of the beam from deviating, we directly limit it with the hanging chain. After the careful welding of this young master, the installation process of the scale is completed very quickly to increase the width of the beam. Bend the two sides of the steel plate 90 degrees to improve the hardness and toughness of the steel plate. After these steel plates are made, the master will then weld them. Although they do not have high-end gas-shielded welding, they have these experienced welding masters. Their efficiency is still very high. They will then weld and fix them with electric welding. With this special equipment, the steel plate on the head has been welded very quickly. Then you can measure the head welding then. Widened steel plates are welded on both sides after the general shape of the bottom is completed. In order to improve the rigidity of the chassis, the two sides of the beam need to be spliced with channel steel. This installation process is relatively simple. During the splicing process, they assist by dropping the chain and then skillfully use electric welding to weld. The steel plates on the sides are spliced very quickly. Next, they can enter the process of making the carriage. First, they will weld the columns on the head, and then the middle is made in advance. This splicing process is still very fast and has been completed. At this time, it is late. After the cross beam at the rear of the trailer is installed, the subsequent details can be assembled on the next day. In order to improve the practicality of the carriage, the front plate of the carriage needs to be welded with a beautifully decorated tool cabin. During this period, the masters on one side are using a bending machine to bend these steel plates into concave and convex shapes. The hardness of the high steel plate. They will then use electric welding to weld these steel plates, since these are all made by them. This process takes a long time. These columns for reinforcement, they made all of them with groove bars. When splicing, since there were no dedicated installation holes, they needed to compare the positions of the holes and then learn from them. Although they did not have drawings for reference, the entire installation process was a piece of cake for these experienced masters. With their rich experience, they can weld the blue plate on the outside of the car body. For the sake of beauty, the top of the blue plate needs to be welded with the original pipe. At this time, the general shape of the entire trailer car body has been made. Next, they can deal with these details. The car body on both sides of the car body and the bottom of the car body need to be welded in the middle to improve the firmness of the bracket. For 19, the upper groove bar is reinforced. After all the bottom brackets are welded, since these suspension brackets are handmade by them, they still need to use electric welding to splice them and then assemble them on the trailer bracket. These suspension steel plates are relatively simple to install. They have been installed very quickly through skilled operation. Next, the axle can be installed. Because the axle is very heavy during the installation, they skillfully used the lifting chain to assist. The installation process was still very fast. They need to select a suitable position for the front of the car body and then weld the fixing steel plate of the traction pin to the beam. Then they can use a tape measure to measure the installation position of the traction pin. After the seat notch is cut out, the installation hole can be cut out. Then, these brackets for reinforcement can be connected and fixed by electric welding. After the main positions are installed, the steel plate can be installed on the bottom of the car body. Since these steel plates are taken in advance according to the size, the installation is very fast. The whole car body is finally made, and and then it can be sprayed with bright paint. Although they do not have a high-end spraying workshop, it is under the skilled operation of the master that the paint sprayed on the car body is still very regular. The taillights at the rear of the trailer are not matched, so they need to assemble on-site. Since the tires of the trailer are not installed, they only need to install these new tires in place. From the axle head cover of this axle, the axle is probably made by Jingfang. The tire has a high-end air cannon, and the efficiency is still very fast. After the trailer's traction pin is installed and fixed firmly, this trailer has been made for a week, and now it can finally leave the factory and go on the road.